Okay, imagine this. You're driving, highway's clear, and then bam, traffic jam out of absolutely nowhere.
Yeah, a phantom jam. Just ripples in the system.
Or think about ants. Leafcutter ants, right? Sometimes they get stuck.
Oh, the ant mill. Just following each other in a circle until they drop.
Exactly. Both are these really vivid pictures, I think, of complex systems just looping, getting stuck.
And it's such a good metaphor for something subtle, but honestly pretty significant happening with AI right now.
Yeah, it feels a bit weird, doesn't it? Counterintuitive given how capable AI seems. But the implications are huge. For information, for how we think even.
Definitely. It's like we're getting a peek behind the curtain. We've been digging into this, looking at the patterns our team's been tracking in the whole AI landscape.
So today we're doing a deep dive specifically into this challenge. People are calling it AI model collapse.
And our goal here really is to unpack it. What is this quiet crisis? What's behind it? What are the signs?
And crucially, how do we move forward? How do we get to a place where human intelligence and machine intelligence actually work together well?
Exactly. It's not about being anti-AI. Not at all. It's about understanding where things are heading and making sure it stays a tool for clarity, not more confusion.
Okay, let's get into it then. This idea of systems looping, the traffic jam, the ants, it feels like the perfect starting point for AI model collapse.
The Ouroboros, right.
Yeah.
The snake eating its own tail.
That's fundamentally the issue we're seeing. These AI systems, especially the big language models, they're increasingly being trained on stuff that other AIs generated.
Right. And the problem there is that the original data, the stuff they first learned from, that was human stuff. Yeah. Messy, diverse.
Beautifully human, yeah. Books, articles, websites, forum discussions, all the texture of real experience and different viewpoints.
But now, if you're feeding AI-generated content back in, it creates this loop. Precisely. It's like a form of digital cannibalism almost. The system starts referencing its own outputs more and more instead of grounding itself in that original rich human data.
So what does that actually do to the models? What happens when they start consuming themselves, so to speak?
Well, the research, and what we're seeing too, points to this model collapse or distributional shift.
Yeah.
Maybe think of it like a writer who only rereads their own old articles.
Okay.
They just keep recycling the same ideas, the same phrases. Eventually, their writing gets stale, repetitive, kind of disconnected from anything new or real. The quality just tanks.
And we're seeing signs of this already. I remember hearing about AI making up book reviews.
Yeah, exactly. Plausible reviews for books that literally didn't exist.
Wow.
Or, you see these market analysis reports, they sound super confident, use all the jargon, but then you try and trace back the data, the original sources. They're just not there. It's what some call confident inaccuracy. They sound totally sure, even when it's just sophisticated guesswork built on previous guesswork.
So it's like the old saying, garbage in, garbage out, but worse.
Kind of. Now it's garbage loops in, replicates, and starts looking like the norm. And it's fascinating, really, because it sort of mirrors our own human biases, doesn't it? Like confirmation bias or getting stuck in echo chambers.
Yeah, but mechanized at scale.
Exactly. The AI predicts based on what it saw last, or most often. And if what it's seeing is increasingly synthetic, it doesn't generate fresh insight. It generates this kind of consensus of potentially flawed synthetic information.
Is there actual research backing this up?
Oh, yeah. There was a study in Nature just this year, 2024. It found that training models on their own outputs leads to, and this is their phrase, irreversible defects in performance.
Irreversible defects.
They use the game of telephone as an analogy. Each time the message gets passed on, little errors creep in, context gets lost, nuance fades away.
And the unusual stuff disappears.
Right. Those rare but maybe really important truths, the edge cases, the statistical tales, they just vanish. Everything gets smoothed out into the average.
So if you've been using AI tools lately and you've just had this feeling like they're a bit dumber or less creative, or just confidently wrong sometimes.
You're probably not imagining it. It isn't necessarily that the AI is getting less intelligent in raw processing power.
It's losing something else.
It's potentially losing perspective.
Yeah.
Losing that connection to the messy, diverse reality it was originally built on.
It makes me think of the internet turning into a hall of mirrors, just reflections of reflections bouncing back and forth.
Until you can't even see the original image anymore. Yeah.
And the real danger here isn't some, Hollywood AI takeover scenario.
No, it's much quieter. It's entropy, really. A system optimized just for prediction based on the data it sees. If that data is decaying into self-reference, the system naturally drifts towards collapse, unless you change the input.
You know, this whole idea of collapse due to lack of diversity, it's not exactly new, is it? We were thinking about parallels in history, even nature.
Absolutely. That's a really important lens. The Irish potato famine is such a stark example.
Right, in the 1840s.
Yeah. Ireland became incredibly dependent on one specific type of potato, the lumper. Super efficient to grow, high yield, but genetically uniform, almost zero diversity.
So when the blight hit?
Catastrophe. There was no resilience, no other strains that might have resisted it. The whole system just collapsed because it lacked those variations, that tail data.
And that maps so clearly onto AI right now, this emerging digital monoculture.
Synthetic content, feeding synthetic systems. It feels efficient. You can generate tons of data quickly.
But it lacks the depth.
It lacks the diversity, those statistical tails, the outliers, the nuances, the unexpected connections that actually give richness and accuracy, especially in complex situations.
So an AI trains on this homogenized, recycled stuff.
The rare insights get drowned out. The unique perspectives fade. You end up with flatter, more predictable outputs. It actually stifles the kind of creativity that comes from bumping into something genuinely different.
There was another parallel too, right? The Roman Empire.
Yeah, that was another one we looked at. Its strength, in many ways, was its uniformity. Roads, language, administration, all standardized. Powerful stuff.
But also brittle.
Exactly. As central control tightened and, sort of, local knowledge and diverse ways of doing things faded, the empire lost its ability to adapt. When big shocks came, plagues, invasions, economic problems, it couldn't flex. It's fractured.
It's that trap of over-optimization again.
Right. Perfect for yesterday's conditions, totally unprepared for tomorrow's surprises. It works brilliantly until it fails catastrophically.
And you contrast that with systems that actually thrive on a bit of messiness, on diversity, like jazz versus maybe very formulaic pop music.
That's a great analogy. Jazz embraces improvisation, the unexpected note, ambiguity. Healthy intelligence, whether it's ours or artificial, needs that adaptability.
It needs the outliers.
It needs to handle the outliers, the low-frequency events, the black swans that don't fit the neat pattern. If you optimize those away, you might get really good at explaining the past.
But you're lost when something new happens.
Totally. And that's the risk with AI relying too heavily on synthetic averages instead of incorporating those human outliers and complexities.
Now, people are trying technical fixes, right? Like RAG retrieval augmented generation, pulling in outside data.
Yeah, and RAG definitely has its place. It can help ground responses in more current facts, reduce outright hallucinations sometimes.
But it's not a silver bullet for this core problem.
Our analysis suggests probably not. Because think about it. Where is it retrieving that external data from? Often the internet.
Which is increasingly full of AI-generated content.
Exactly. So you're trying to fix the problem of synthetic data by pulling in data from a source that's itself becoming polluted with synthetic data. It's like trying to irrigate a struggling field with contaminated water.
Okay, so it doesn't really solve the root cause.
And it can introduce other issues, too, like pulling in biased information from that polluted source. Or privacy concerns, depending on what data it scrapes. It doesn't fix the underlying lack of true diversity.
So what's a better model, then, for resilience?
We found the beehive to be a really interesting analogy. A healthy hive isn't perfectly efficient in the way we might think.
How so?
Well, some bees forage close by, others fly really far. Some check out common flowers, others investigate rare ones. This mix of strategies, this diversity,
makes the whole colony robust.
It makes it anti-fragile. If one food source dries up or a predator appears, the colony has other options already in play. It can adapt. That's the kind of model AI needs, aiming for adaptability and resilience, not just short-term, narrow efficiency.
And layered underneath all this tech talk about data and models, there's a human element, isn't there? An ethical dimension.
Oh, absolutely. When AI scrapes and processes human conversations, our writing, our analysis, it's absorbing worldviews. It's absorbing biases.
And if it's increasingly trained on synthetic stuff generated by previous biased AIs,
the bias just amplifies. It gets baked deeper into the system. It raises big questions about, who creates the original human data? Whose voices get included? Whose gets scraped without permission? And what value do we actually place on genuine, original human thought in this new landscape?
It's a real irony, isn't it? In the quest to build thinking machines, we might accidentally devalue actual thinking.
It's a risk we need to be really conscious of.
Okay, so if this is the situation, AI potentially looping, losing touch, getting foggy, what's the way out? how do we, as you put it, rehumanize intelligence?
It makes me think of that Zen saying, if your mind is muddy, sweep the garden. If the garden's muddy, sweep your mind.
Meaning?
Meaning when things feel unclear, corrupted, you have to go back to deliberate, focused human action to bring back clarity.
So as we see it, model collapse isn't really AI breaking. It's more like it's working as designed, just on increasingly poor fuel.
Yeah, it's less an isolated AI tech problem and more a story about our human systems, our information ecosystem. It's a design challenge for us.
And the path forward, based on what we've looked at, seems to be about realignment.
A fundamental realignment. Not fighting the machines, but consciously reclaiming our role. Grounding AI again in human experience, human wisdom.
And what really jumped out from our work here is that maybe the most powerful thing we can do now is create original stuff.
Exactly. That's the radical act in an age of easy automation. Not churning out generic content, not just hitting publish fast, but doing the messy, thoughtful work.
Like what?
Like work based on real lived experience, deep analysis, genuine empathetic communication. The stuff AI, right now, really struggles to fake convincingly.
And that kind of original work, that's the food AI needs.
That's high quality signal that can cut through all the synthetic noise. That detailed write-up of a unique problem you solved. That unconventional analysis, that personal reflection. That's gold. We keep coming back to this idea, signal beats scale, quality over just quantity.
So thinking about this practically, what does this mean for you listening, for any of us? It feels like we can build a sort of toolkit for rehumanizing AI in our own lives.
Absolutely. And it can start with small habits. First one, create the environment before you consume. Seriously, try starting your day generating something, writing, sketching, even just voice noting your own thoughts before you dive into emails or social feeds. Put your own signal out first.
Okay, I like that. What else?
Second, curate human, not just algorithmic. Be intentional about what you read and listen to. Seek out trusted human creators. Read things that clearly took time and effort, not just whatever the algorithm surfaces because it's fast or trendy.
Makes sense. Demand quality input for yourself.
Third, demand provenance. Ask, where did this come from? When you get info, especially from an AI, push for sources. Ask for the documents, the URLs. If they're missing, try to verify it yourself. Insist on footnotes, essentially.
Good one. Be skeptical. Check sources. What's next?
Fourth, build rituals of reflection. Carve out time for actual thinking, journaling, voice notes, even just quiet contemplation. That's often where original insights bubble up, when you process things in your own way.
Develop your own perspective.
And fifth, support the makers. When you find people, writers, researchers, artists, thinkers, doing truly original, high-quality human work, support them. Buy their book, subscribe to their newsletter, share their stuff. Help create an environment where that kind of intelligence is actually valued.
That's a great list. And this isn't just for individuals, right? This applies to companies, organizations, too.
Hugely. If organizations just chase AI efficiency above all else, they might just be accelerating their own internal model collapse. The smarter play seems to be using AI to augment human brilliance, not just replace tasks wholesale.
So investing in environments for deep work.
Yeah, reducing noise, encouraging thoughtful contribution, using tools maybe to see where people need support or development, not just judgment. Funding training that actually expands thinking, not just teaches software clicks.
It sounds like the ROI might be slower, but deeper.
Exactly. It builds resilience, trust, real innovation over the long haul, not just short-term automation gains.
We should be honest, though, the convenience factor is strong. AI offers amazing shortcuts.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's tempting to just take the easy route.
So navigating this takes conscious effort. A bit of friction, maybe.
It does. It requires pausing, resisting the path of least resistance sometimes. But you don't have to boil the ocean. Focus on your sphere, your own work, your team, your daily habits. That's where change starts.
Thinking about model collapse this way, it feels less like just a technical problem.
It feels more like an invitation, a chance for a reset.
Yeah. AI was meant to reflect us, amplify us, right? Not replace the source code, so to speak.
And real intelligence, the kind that adapts and creates, it's often relational. It grows in conversation, in tackling friction, in the space where pure data ends and human story begins.
So the path forward, the one that seems to emerge from all this, it's back to basics.
Back to community, creativity, curiosity. Doing work that might be a bit slower, feel a bit deeper, but is much more alive with real human input.
Documenting the unusual things, investing in the overlooked details.
Building spaces, physical or digital, that actually honor insight, not just information processing speed.
And when we do that, when we focus on creating and curating that rich, messy human signal,
We're not just improving the potential training data for machines down the line. We're fundamentally enriching the training set for ourselves, for our own collective intelligence.
the future isn't synthetic. It's symphonic. That's a nice way to put it.
We just need to make sure we're creating something worth learning from, worth echoing.
Okay, so just to quickly wrap up the core idea here.
Sure, AI is facing this challenge, model collapse, because it's increasingly training on its own synthetic output.
Right, leading to this loss of diversity, accuracy, nuance, like a digital echo chamber. We saw parallels in history, in nature, monocultures becoming brittle.
Exactly. And the way forward isn't purely technical. It's about rehumanizing intelligence.
Which means consciously creating original work, seeking out human sources, demanding transparency, building in reflection, supporting quality human thinking.
It's an ongoing thing, requires deliberate effort from all of us, individuals and organizations.
So maybe here's a final thought to leave you with. What's one small, deliberate thing you could do today, either to contribute some original thinking or to consciously seek out a truly human source or perspective?
How can you add a little bit of high-quality signal back into the noise? Just something to consider.
And if you do want to explore some of the research and insights we touched on today, we'll put links in the description.